Hey guys, Kevin Gahan here with Team Losi Racing for In Touch with TLR. This week we are at Silver State, Las Vegas, South Point Casino, and we're going to talk about some 8-scale diffs. It's only right since we're at another 8-scale race this year, and there's a lot of cool stuff to know about differentials and different stuff, different weight biases with oil. The very first thing we're going to do here today, we're going to build an 8-scale diff. We're going to go over some of the easy techniques that we use as the race team to make things just go a little bit quicker, a little easier. I know there's a big debate out there always about how much oil and different stuff you should use inside of your diff. So I'm going to show you how we do it. The real simple, easy way of making sure you have the right amount of oil. Too much oil in your diff is going to make it expand. Oil expands in there, and the next thing you know, you have a pressure lock, hydro lock in the diff, and your diff start feeling funny and don't work properly. So we're going to get into some of that stuff there. But first thing we're going to do, we're going to build a diff, and then we're going to talk about diffs, the different weight and oils and what they do. So I have a diff here that was out of a kit. I hope you guys can hear me. It's pretty loud in the building. I'm going to try and talk as loud as I can. So I have a diff that was out of a kit, so that way I can kind of show you guys, some of the stuff that comes in the kit and kind of what we do with it. So, first thing we got here, we got the diff case. So I always like to start with the diff case side, work my way up. Black grease is your friend here. You're gonna need you're gonna need some black grease. The first thing you want to do is put the bearings. The bearing, because it's easy to forget the bearing. A lot of people will build the diff. I've seen it happen and not put the bearing on. So you want to make sure that that flange on the bearing goes down, just like that. That's the first thing you do, and then the out drive. This is the other the other big mistake that I see a lot of people do. They don't grease this. See this little groove right here in the out drive? That groove is there to put black grease in. So you want to put a small layer of black grease right around that ring that is grooved up on there. I like to take afterwards, kind of swirl it around, move it up the shaft a little bit. Then what I like to do is I like to put it in the diff. I like to spin it around like this, kind of pull it back, spin it around, pull it back, spin around like that. You'll see there's going to be a little bit of leftover black grease built up in between there. You want to get rid of that. And the reason why you want to get rid of that, sorry, Dakota, I'm going to take his rag here. The reason why you want to get rid of that black grease in there is because your brake pads run on the center diff here. You don't want this black grease to fling up and get on your brakes, because you're going to end up having brakes that will fade, and they're gonna get grease on them. They're not gonna work as well. So right there, that's the first thing I do. I build this side right here. Then you have the red O-rings. Now you want to look inside of the red O-rings. You'll see a little bit of a flashing in there. The little bit of flashing is okay, but every once in a while there'll be a big piece of flashing in there. You're going to want to grab that big piece of flashing and kind of pull it off with your fingernails if you can, and then you're good to go. Now I'll also put some black grease on the O-ring, because you want the O-ring to have a little bit of lubrication, because if you don't, that O-ring's going to get really hot really quick without any lubrication on it, and it's going to end up burning it up. So now what I do, I'll pull this back out. I will stick the O-ring back down into the out drive, into the cup there. Oops, fell out. And then hold your finger over it. You can push it down. Needle nose is a good item to have when you're building diffs. I'll take and just kind of push that O-ring down in there. Now the O-ring's nice and flat down in there. And then you'll have your pin. I use the vice grips here again. You'll notice that one side of the slot is slotted all the way down. That's so you're able to get the pin in. So you'll want to line up the out drive there. just kind of maneuver it a little bit. It should go together, slide together really easy. And there you go. And there you go. Perfectly in there. Everything should spin. It'll be a little tight because that O-ring's brand new. That O-ring will break in just a little bit. Everything will kind of smooth out once you have it going. So then, then what I like to do, I like to put this in. I put it in dry. Some people say to put a little black grease in there. I don't prefer that because then the black grease kind of gets into your silicone oil, and I don't find that necessary. So I put it in dry. The silicone oil will get in there and everything will fill up. So that's your next step. Put that in just like so. That should spin. So this side is relatively done. Now, there's a few things here that some people don't know, and I actually have mentioned this multiple times when I see people building a diff at the track. And most don't know this, but I find it's somewhat important, and some people don't. But I'll tell you how I believe it is. So inside the diff case, like I mentioned earlier, one side the slot goes all the way down. One side the slot does not go all the way down. Now, I always put the bottom set of gears in the side with the slot that does not go all the way down, because that holds it from falling in and messing up with your gear mesh. So, like I said, right here, this is the side that is not slotted all the way down, and I always put that in first because it will hold it from going too far down and getting the wrong gear mesh on the bottom gear. So when you're building this, you'll see the other side here, the slot will go all the way down to the bottom, and the side I put the first pin in, the slot goes down halfway into that little moon key, and that's the first one you want to put in. Now the next one just goes right into the other side. Let's build this. So to get the two pins lined up, I'll spin this around. Sometimes you'll need to get some needle nose and just twist it. And just like that, you want those two pins to sit down perfectly flush, just like that. Now the next step, what I do is I like to fill it up with oil. That's why I build this side first, because it can sit off to the side for a few minutes and get some of the large bubbles out while you're building the other half. So to put the oil in, I literally just fill up these corners as much as I can first. You want to just fill this all up. And I'm going to show you guys a really easy trick that pretty much our entire race team we do. This is the way we build our diffs with Dakota, Tanner. This is the way we build our diffs all the time. It's really easy. So now when you're doing this, like I said, you don't even need to worry about your diff oil height or how much oil you're putting in. You literally want to just fill up the diff. So you can see I got quite a bit of oil in there. I will lightly spin these because there's going to be some big air bubbles down at the bottom that you want to get out of there. So there you go. Got all the big air bubbles out of there. Diff oil height at this point really doesn't matter, and I'll explain to you why that is here in a little bit. So we're gonna set this off to the side. I'm building the center diff, so which all this that I talk about here is the exact same steps from front diff, center diff, and rear diff. I will mention while we're letting this sit for a minute or two. For me, and for most of us, you know, some people use the air pump by Tamiya and suck all the air out of the diff. Personally, again, kind of like with the shocks myself, I don't find it to be that big of a deal. There has to be some air in there already because that oil will expand. So there's some air in there which is going to mix into the oil, and it's not going to really make a huge difference. If you like using the pump, use the pump. It's perfectly fine if it works for you. but it's not 100% necessary. Now, one thing, if this is a new diff, obviously, but if you're rebuilding an old diff, when you're taking it apart, if you're just going to change the oil, which I recommend doing if it's a hot day, you know, a really hot day, summertime racing, we recommend doing the diffs, you know, putting new oil in or topping the oil off before the main event. So you run practice and qualifying, you know, check your diffs. Mainly the center diff and the rear diff get the most amount of beating, the most amount of work. They do the most amount of work. When you take these pins out of the diff case, you want to make sure that there's no notches that wear into the side of the diff case. That normally happens on really hot days when you're running a lighter diff oil. When the diff's doing tremendous amount of work, it's diffing out constantly, and it's really hot. These diffs will get over 400 degrees in the summertime and 300 plus in the wintertime. They get extremely hot, and those little cups from the pin beating on its sleeve that it rides in, it'll get a cup in there, and once it cups out, your diff's gonna bind up and you're gonna have some major issues. So we change these diff cases out. They're pretty cheap to change out. We'll change them out, put new ones in for every single race that we go to as a race team here. But for the average person, you can just take them apart when you change the oil, take a razor blade and just run it along that sleeve that's in there and make sure there's no cup. If there's a cup, unfortunately, you're gonna have to change out your diff. So let's get to building this. Sorry, it's getting a little loud in here, guys. We're gonna get to building this side of the diff. It's the same thing.
Go to liverc.com and you can see the official heat sheets. These will be the heats for all 3 rounds of qualifying. So get used to them.
Well, apparently an outdrive is missing here. Well, shoot. Sorry, guys. I guess I misplaced, or somebody stole the outdrive out of that diff I just built. I took apart. Oh, I don't believe it fell on the ground. Well, shoot. So, anyways, I'm gonna have to build it with the wrong side here. Well, it looks like somebody stole the outdrive, the other center outdrive out of the bag. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to use a front one, guys. So don't laugh at me. Apologize for that. I don't know where it would have went, but somebody probably took it out of the bag. Happens all the time. So I'm gonna use a front universal for the center. Sorry, guys. But it's the same process. You're gonna put the bearing on there first. Bearing goes on first, just like that. You're gonna throw some black grease right around the ring, just like we did before. And that's gonna go together just like that. We're gonna twist it around. And like I said earlier, you want to make sure you wipe off that excess black grease, because that's going to get right onto your brakes, and you don't want that. And we're going to put a little bit of black grease on the red O-ring, just like so. I'm going to speed this up because it's the exact same process as the bottom half. Now, here's where it gets a little different. I do not put this piece on right here. And this is the piece right here that's going to show us our diff height, oil height. So this is exactly how we build the diffs. We take this piece right here once you have your oil in your diff. Take this piece, we're gonna throw it right on top of here first. You're gonna see all that excess oil bubbling off the top. Take your finger, wipe it off with your finger. Wipe it on the rag. Now what you do is you hold your finger here, you're gonna spin this around. just like that. You have some more excess oil there. You're gonna wipe that off. And you have the correct amount of oil in your diff. That's exactly how we do it. That tells you exactly how much oil. This is how we've been building it for years. Just like that, all done. Take your gasket. I like to set it on here. Take your pin and line it up with the slot. I use a razor blade just to kind of line things up. I had it lined up a little wrong. Then you'll line up your holes. I'll just throw 2 screws in there, guys, but that's exactly how we build them. It makes it really easy to set the oil height in the diff. Like I said, you throw that piece on there, you can just wipe your finger off, and then we like to spin it a little bit more to get a little bit more of the oil off. You wipe it off with your finger, put the top plate on, get it all together, and that's basically exactly how we build the front, rear, and center diffs. Now let's talk about just overall diffs themselves. Do you ever... I'll get back to your question, Ronnie. So let's just talk diffs performance, what it does on the track, and give a little bit of input on that. I'm gonna grab Dakota's Truggy here and take the body off. And I'm going to talk general diff oil for a minute, and then I'm going to talk about diff oil in our car. It's a little bit different. So you have your center diff here.
All right, guys, so the sheets are posted here at the track as well.
They're talking. So you have your center diff here.
Printed version.
So if you picture your power plant is going to your center diff
So check the heat sheets.
Now if your diff oil is light, the power is going to
Billy
go...
Tylasta, where you at, Billy?
Sorry guys, they're over there talking on the mic, it's loud.
Your sign fell down up top.
I don't know if it's loud for you, but it's really loud in here. So the lighter the diff oil, most of the time, the car is going to accelerate, it's going to squat onto the rear. So the drivetrain is going to bleed the power to the front, and that's when you see mainly Truggies do it really easily. It's very noticeable. The front tires balloon up really big, the front tires do. That's because there's a light center diff oil in it.
There is no resource.
If you went up in the center diff and made the center diff to a heavier oil, it's going to distribute that power more equally front to rear. The front tires are going to balloon less. If you have a really thick diff oil, the car is going to act very four-wheel drive-ish. It's going to have very equal power front and rear, and that's the difference with the center diff. Now when you have it's kind of, you have to think about it the same way with the front diff. As you go light oil, the one tire will balloon whichever tire is grabbing the dirt or traction. The other tire is going to balloon more. So normally a lighter front diff will have more turn in, but less on power pulling you out of the corner. A thicker front diff oil is going to push more coming in, but the car is going to equal front tire pull. The car around the corner, you'll have more on power on-power steering. Same thing with the front diff. When you come into the corner with a lighter diff, the car will rotate more, but it'll have less on-power steering. The rear diff is a little different. It's a little bit more critical. A light diff oil will definitely have the car more, will be more rotating. The car will want to rotate more coming into the corner, but if it will want to diff out. So you'll get on the throttle and the rear will want to squirm around and kind of diff out and get real loose on you. That's kind of the differences. Sorry guys, it's really loud in here. It's really, really loud in here whenever they start talking. But I hope that helps you guys out with some of the diff stuff. It's something to play around with. We normally like to run about, we run between 10, 5 on the truggy, or 10, 15, 5. The buggy, we like, Dakota runs like 5, 5, 3. Tanner's at like 7, 10, 3. It's a little driver preference. Some people like their car to turn in. Some people like their car to accelerate more coming out. It's a bit of a driver preference. But if you find yourself kind of ballooning tires up and getting a little kind of crazy with some of the tires, start changing your diff oil. Go up in diff oils. On a really bumpy track, there's kind of two things. Savoya likes a thick center diff because he feels like the car wants to drive through it. Other guys like a lighter diff because they feel like the power in the bump bleeds into the diff itself. You have less acceleration, so the car kind of gets less swappy. Diffs are really, really tricky. It's really a driver preference thing, and you really have to go to the track and kind of get a feel for it. But I hope that kind of helps you guys. Center diff, more thicker oil, more four-wheel drive, front to rear, lighter oil. It's going to go bleed most of the time more to the rear power. The front's going to balloon up, and you're going to have, you know, diffing out. Your car's not going to accelerate as much. I hope that helps, guys. I hope that helps a little bit on the diff oil, how we kind of measure how much oil we put in there. It's very important to put black grease on the outdrives themselves, because if you don't, it gets so hot, the two pieces of metal will seize together, and you'll have a problem. That also will cause these diff cases here to melt sometimes. Sometimes you'll have pins shoot out on hot days. So the more you can keep it lubricated, the better. In hot conditions, the diffs will burn oil. You'll notice that you'll take it apart and the oil will... You'll notice you'll take it apart and the oil will... there'll be a lot less oil in there. So you need to make sure you check those things out and make sure you have enough oil. It makes a difference the way the car drives. If the oil gets black, you know, a lot of people say, oh, my oil got black really quick. It's okay. All the silicone oil gets black really, really fast, so I wouldn't worry so much about the color of it when you're taking it apart. Now, if you take it apart and it turns out it turned to grease, well, then you kind of waited a little long before changing that diff oil out. So, yeah. So if you guys got any questions, lay them on me. Let's chit-chat for a few, and we'll go from there. Put Dakota's truggy back together before I get in trouble. But, guys, I hope the videos are helping out. We're going to keep plugging away on these, like I said, every week. It's a little difficult sometimes. I'm at the track a lot for these races. So Ronnie says, do you ever sit the heavy diff fluid diffs on a smart diff? So we ran the smart diff quite a few years ago. Oh, we ran the smart diffs quite a few years ago. I got something else I want to show you guys that I forgot to mention. We ran the smart diffs, you know, quite a while ago. The only issue we were having was they would slip a little bit. And we haven't really ran them in quite a long time, honestly. We did try them with some diff oils, but that really kind of defeats the purpose of what a smart diff and what it was designed to use. If you put oil in it, you're really just turning it back into a diff again. It's supposed to use that smart grease. The point of the smart diff is when you're off the throttle, the diff is completely unengaged, and it will be super free. So it will be super free, have a lot of turn in. As soon as you start picking the throttle up, it's supposed to lock up like you have very heavy diff oil in it. So you're supposed to get best of both worlds. Really free, a lot of turn in, and a lot of punch and acceleration coming out of the corner. That was the point. Jose, what brand of diff oil you guys are using? So we always use TLR oil, diff oil. This came out of a kit. We use TLR diff oil, we use TLR shock oil. There's most and a lot of the industry uses our oil, even in other car brands. Our oil is really good. It's very consistent. We check it. We check every batch in the warehouse before it goes into bottles. So the consistency and everything is always very consistent with our diff oil and shock oil. So never hesitate to use the shock oil, diff oil, or our tire glue. RC Rob, what's the negative or the thick? What's the negative to thick center diff oil and kit oils? Really, what they say. So the diff oil, I'll tell you, the diff oil is the same oil. There's nothing different with this oil. This is the same oil. The shock oil is different oil. I'll tell you. If you have the individual TLR bottles, I would recommend using it. We have not found anything to be wrong with the other oil that comes in the kit for the shocks. The problem you'll have is if you already have the other oil, just use it because it's consistent and you'll change the oil and everything will be always the same. You're not going to be able to go into the store and buy the kit oil. So that's the only reason why. There's nothing absolutely wrong with the kit oil for the shock oil, but otherwise you keep it consistent. So the negative on thick center diff oil, the negative is you're going to lose some turn in. That's the big negative. And if you get too thick on the diff oil, the car's going to want to kind of hop around in the bumps. You know, I think the majority of people find that the thick diff oil isn't as good as in the bumps. There are a few people that do like the thick diff oils and find them to work really well in the bumps. But yeah, I mean, the downside is going to be steering. What is the best to shim diffs for smooth operation, sir? Troy, are you talking the rear diff or what? Explain exactly what you're talking about, Troy. Because our center diff isn't shimmable and our front diff is not shimmable, but our rear diff is. And the rear diff for shimming, it's a little different from car to car. You just want to have a little bit of backlash. It would be like setting your you want to have it a little tighter than setting your clutch belt, is what I would suggest. Or if you run any 10 scale, it would be just like setting your backlash on your spur and pinion. You don't want it too loose. You want to have it as tight as you can with just a little bit of slop, because it's going to be as free as it can be as long as it has a little bit of backlash. So that's what we recommend. Definitely not too loose, because when those diff cases get hot, there's obviously movement in every single diff case from everybody's car, so the tighter you can get it, the better. Yeah, rear diff. Yeah, Troy, just like I said, there's not a set number. I would like to say that there is, but every car is a slightly different. Set it as tight as you can with just the smallest amount of backlash. You don't want to have any high spots, so you want to find a high spot and get that as the lightest amount of backlash as you can. There are little bits of high spots when you spin them around, so that's basically how you do it. I did want to bring up one thing. So these little shims right here that come with the car kit, you can see those. They're real thin little shims. And those shims are supposed to go in, you put the outdrive in, you put the seal in, and then in the kit, in the manual, it tells you to put this little shim in, and then the drive pin. We do not use these shims. Nobody on the team, or on the race team, uses these shims. They bind up the drivetrain a little bit, and I'll tell you, these shims were made way back in the day when we did race rollers, and the diffs have to get sent over in the cars and all that, and they sit in the warehouse. And as you know, any diff, they swell up the O-ring. Just silicone oil naturally swells up O-rings, and these little shims were developed to eliminate that, to eliminate the diffs from leaking. So that's why these were made. We still keep them in there because there are some people that still use them because they help with eliminating the diffs from leaking a little bit. But they're not good for performance. So we do not use these shims. So if you put these in your car, I recommend not using these shims. Your diffs will be a lot freer. John, what diff combos does the team run in the 4.0 Nitro Buggy? Typically American tracks. So we go between 7, 10, and 3, and 5, 5, 3. Tanner really likes. I believe I know he likes 10 in the center, and I believe he runs 7 in the front. But yeah, that's really the two combos that we used. Savoya in Europe will get up to 12,000 in the center diff. Sometimes he'll run 10, 12, 3. But typically in the US, I think the best all-around diff package for the average guy in most of the race team is going to be a 7, 7, 3 or 5, 7, 3. I think that's the best combo. When you get down to the 5 in our car right now today, it's kind of aggressive on the steering. That 10,000 and 7,000 in the center diff definitely help tame the car down, and I think that's probably the best all-around combo. That's what I run. How often do you recommend replacing the orange O-ring on the diff? So, like I said, that I recommend doing the diff oil. The diff oil should be done. You should show up to every race. Every big race that you're going to, if you're traveling somewhere or anything, with all new diff cases. The diff cases inside there, these cases right here. These cases right here are really cheap. They're a cheap item to replace, and the diffs mean so much in the performance of the car. We change these out, like I said, every race that we go to. And then we change the oil. If it's a hot day, we change the oil before the mains. If we're not changing our diffs and we're really happy with the performance of the car, we'll run practice, qualifying, and mains on a set of diffs, and then they're no good after that weekend. We'll rebuild them basically. So whenever you put a new one of these in, we recommend putting a new O-ring in. Unless your diff starts leaking, then you need to replace the O-ring. But typically, we replace these for every major or every race that we go to. So I would suggest at that time putting a new O-ring in and a new seal. The new gasket right there, the new gasket is also really important. Another thing to do, tighten these screws down pretty tight. I mean, really get after it. I mean, you want to crush that gasket. I see a lot of people tighten it down and they just barely snug them. Tighten. I mean, get after those 4 screws. Make sure they're tight, because that's going to crush that gasket, and then that gasket's going to actually work. So that's another good point. Make sure you really tighten these 4 screws down. I only have 2 in there right now because we're doing this video. But don't be shy on tightening those. Don't strip them out, but don't be shy to tighten them. Okay, makes sense. What way for the oil is good? Hunter, we just talked about oil quite a bit. 553, 7.5, 7.73 is really good. Anywhere right in that range is a very good all-around package for our car. Then it's just driver preference. I hope John got another TLR. Where are y'all racing at? So we're in, some of you jumped on, we're in Las Vegas right now at the Silver State. It's inside the South Point Hotel Casino. It's been pretty amazing. I like it. It's a lot of fun. The track's going to get really, really rough. It's going to get really difficult. I mean, just after practice right now, the track is really, really bumpy. So the next couple of days should be very, very interesting. Should be really fun to watch. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So just curious, hearing feedback straight from the source. Had a good experience with my 3.0. Yeah, John, thanks, man. The 3.0 was a great car. The 4.0, we made some small improvements and different stuff to it. Yeah, it's a good car. So, Ronnie, glad you like your 4.0. You guys got any more questions for me? I'll wait just a couple more minutes. We'll answer a few more questions if you got. So, talked about diffs. We've talked about shocks. If you guys got any suggestions for videos in the future for like next week, the week after, throw them in the comments below this video afterwards, and I'll work on them. I know we had some last week. I'm trying to remember them all. We wanted to talk. Some people wanted to talk about building clutches. I think there was stuff about brake setup. I would like to talk about brakes. I'll probably do that next week. We'll talk about brakes. I'll be back in the office, be in a clean environment, quiet. We'll be able to talk about brakes. There's a couple of things that I do for Dakota. I really help Dakota with his brakes and a lot of the other guys on the team. There's some stuff that I do with nitro brake setup that I think a lot of people don't, but it's a very obvious thing to do. We do it with everything else we do with our 8 scale about setting dead bands and different stuff. But I've never heard anybody ever talk about setting their dead band for their brakes, which I find kind of crazy, but I find it very important. We set our dead band for our throttle. We should have a dead band and stuff like that for our brakes. I set brakes using a dead band kind of theory, and Dakota likes it a lot. That's how I've set his brakes for quite a few years. And every time I've done it this way, he instantly likes his brakes. He finds them to work really, really well. He has a good feel, a good balance, and a consistency with his brakes. So that's a good one. Next week, we're going to talk about nitro brakes. I'm going to show you how I do it and how we do it on the race team. So that'll be a good one. And then after next week, we're going to get into some 10 scale stuff. We've talked a lot about nitro. I think it's because we've been at a lot of nitro races lately. So next week we'll talk about, or the following weeks, we'll talk about some 10 scale stuff, building 10 scale diffs, building 10 scale shocks, different stuff like that. So, and then we'll get back into some 8 scale stuff after that. What is the purpose to run the job springs on the truggy? What do you mean, the job springs? So at Silver State, we've been running the Evo springs on the truggy because it's super loose and it's really bumpy, and we found them to work. Normally we don't run the new Buggy Evo springs, but here they've been working. If you're looking for something else, Rick, let me know on that, and I'll help you out. Any chance of shaft drive, 4-wheel drive? I wish I could say. High frequency and low frequency, or is that what you're talking? HP and SP. Sorry, Rick. Unfortunately I'm not quite getting what you're talking about, buddy. Do you recommend tuning kit for the Nitro buggy? Jose, the Nitro. So the tuning kit was developed for the World Championships in Las Vegas. We went there and tested for months. We were expecting a super bumpy track like it was, and some of the stuff in that kit was stuff that we were learning from Europe with the guys over there. They have big tracks, really fast. So that's the whole point of moving the hubs back the 2 millimeters. It's taking some of the bone angle out, some of the bone bind out, allowing the suspension to work under acceleration. Whenever you move that bone sweep, take that bone sweep out, the suspension's going to work more freely under hard acceleration. So there's good points to that. We have been running the 4 millimeter chassis with with some of those parts. The universals also in that kit were developed for really bumpy tracks. If you haven't seen the video that I talked about building or working with universals on our 8 scale, it was one of the first videos I think we did. You can check it out on the YouTube channel, Team Losi Racing YouTube channel. You can go check that out, watch that video. I talk about the universals and what that did for us. But yeah, we're using parts of that kit to what we have on the car today. So it's not the full tuning kit. We're using different pieces of it. Sometimes we're using the universals, sometimes we're using the hubs back. They're all just tools that we have, and the tools at TLR we have developed to give everybody the best opportunity to do the best they can. Universals work really well when it's super bumpy. They don't have as much forward grip or traction when the track is really loose. But if the track is really loose and extremely bumpy, the universals can come into play and start working well. We've been really liking the 4mm standard chassis. The hubs back when you have enough traction and you need the car to just be better through the bumps under hard acceleration. So those are the two key parts of the tuning kit. Now with the universals, if you go back and watch my video, I talk about long universal in the rear versus short universal in the rear. We've been running the long universal, which is the front universal in the rear. I explain how to do that in the video, so if you want, go check out that video and you'll be able to get all the details on the universals. Hot body springs. Yes, we have been using the hot body springs. Up until this point, we've been using the hot body springs on the Truggy. I'm not sure what colors they are. It's a solid color, and I don't have those details. But yes, we've been using our new Buggy Evo springs this weekend at Silver State. Clutch setup. Whoops, sorry guys, I flipped the camera around. Clutch setup, we've been using just the standard clutch setup that's online. You know, 2 blue aluminum shoes, 2 carbon shoes, green on carbon, and gold on aluminum. Another really cool thing that we've been testing, Ryan Dunford brought this up, and Dakota tried this last week when we were doing some nitro testing out at Thunder Alley. And Dakota really liked it. Unfortunately, we didn't have any more of the clutch shoes with us, but they're running the RTR shoes. It's a Losi part number. You can look them online. It's a high endurance clutch shoe, I believe is what it's called. They're silver colored, and we run that with all gold springs. And Dakota really liked it. He was really happy with it, and he wished he had some more to run here. I'll give you guys some more details on that, but yeah, it was something Ryan Dunford's been working on. I know Savoya in France has tried this clutch setup as well, and he's also liking it. So if you like, check it out online. I'll find the part number. I'll throw it in the description up above. I'll edit the description. I'll throw that up above. It's a Losi high endurance long wear clutch shoe with all gold springs. Getting a new Truggy next spring, having a 4.0 now. Any word on a 5.0 release? Nothing right now that I can mention. Sorry there, Chad. I wish I could help you out. Ronnie, when will the long universal be back in stock? Ooh, I don't know. I'll find out for you. I'll talk with Todd when I get back in the office next week. We try and cycle out things. We try and get things back in stock as quick as possible. The universals have been very popular lately. A lot of people have been running them, so I'm sure we've kind of misjudged on the quantities that we needed in stock. So, all right, guys, we're out of here for today. Be watching us on the Instagram and the Team Losi Racing page all weekend long through Silver State. I'm going to be posting photos. There's a photo album of the race. You can go check it out on the Facebook page. I got some cool photos in there. There's going to be more photos all weekend long. We're going to do some live videos. We're going to talk to the guys. Qualifying starts tomorrow. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying these videos. If you have any other stuff or any other videos that you want to see, throw it in the comments below. Thank you guys. See you later.